Welcome back, grade 12s. In this lesson, we will examine in details some of the characters in the play. You would have noticed in your textbooks there would have been a heading, Dramatis Personae, and all that means is a list of characters in the drama. The first character that we are going to discuss is our protagonist, Hamlet. Hamlet is the Prince of Denmark, and at 30, he is still studying at the University of Wittenberg. His mother, Gertrude, married his uncle Claudius very soon after his father died, and Hamlet has returned to Denmark to attend the funeral of his father. Now, one would expect that he would be heir to his father's throne, but his uncle Claudius is now king of Denmark. So there obviously would be some kind of, or will be some kind of tension between Hamlet and his uncle, and that tension is intensified by the fact that his uncle has married his mother, because that relationship is seen as being incestuous. So what are Hamlet's qualities? Hamlet is a deep thinker. He constantly focuses on existential questions about religion, death, truth, his own circumstances, and fate. Now, introspection would be a very good quality to have if you are a student at university, where you have to analyze and discuss various things. However, if you are at court, you cannot think too obsessively and take too long in making decisions, because sometimes you need to make spur of the moment decisions. So Hamlet's indecisiveness doesn't really make him a very good courtier. Hamlet even obsessively thinks about the fact that he obsessively thinks. We do know that he does love his mother dearly, and he seems to have serious feelings for Ophelia, but his mother's marriage to Claudius makes him distrust all women, and he even seems to hate them. We get the sense that Hamlet thinks that because his mother has not been faithful to her husband's memory by marrying so quickly after his death, he feels that all women are fickle, they cannot be distrusted, and they allow their lust to control the decisions that they make. He detests all forms of deception, yet it is quite ironic that he plots to determine whether Claudius is guilty of his father's murder, and he also pretends to be insane in order to elicit information from various characters so that he can determine whether Claudius is indeed guilty of his father's murder. At times, though, we get a sense that Hamlet is really insane, because it seems that he is overcome by all the challenges that he faces. Despite his obsessive thinking, we also know that Hamlet can act quite impulsively, and this is seen when he murders Polonius in a fit of rage, thinking that it is Claudius hiding behind the arras in his mother's room. A question you can consider as a reader and as the audience is whether Hamlet is just pessimistic by nature, or if it is the circumstances that he faces currently which makes him pessimistic. Remember, his father had just died, and barely within a month, his mother remarried she married his uncle, who now sits on the throne, which Hamlet had possibly aspired to sit on. Hamlet is an enigma, a puzzle, a man so complex that he doesn't completely even understand himself. In other words, he is simply just like any other real person. And that is the reason why Hamlet has become such a well-known character in English literature. We will now examine our antagonist, Claudius. He is, of course, as mentioned, Hamlet's uncle and Gertrude's second husband. We know that he's power hungry, calculating, and lustful. He murders his brother in order to take the throne of Denmark and, who knows, to marry his wife. Claudius's primary skill is his ability to manipulate others through the clever use of language. The manner in which he murders the previous king, his brother, is therefore quite significant. Claudius pours poison into the sleeping king's ear. Metaphorically, his ability to manipulate people with language is also a sort of pouring poison into their ears. Claudius is not interested in the harm that his words might cause, as long as he gets the results that he wants. So he is a Machiavellian character, and for him the end justifies the means. He easily charms the royal court into accepting his hasty marriage to his brother's widow. He calls her our sometime sister, now our queen, and he comes up with plot after plot to protect his ill-gained power. Note that once he becomes king, because he realizes that he has become king by killing the previous king, he realizes that it is a tenuous hold on power that he does have, and so he becomes paranoid about his position and who might also be plotting against him. He is the consummate politician. He is brilliantly manipulative, he's suave, he's extremely deceitful, and as mentioned, he does not have a strong hold on power, and he realizes that he also always has to look over his shoulder. He's also hedonistic and selfish, even though he wishes to praise so that he can share, or he knows that God has seen the sins which he has committed, that is of killing his brother and taking his brother's throne. He's also selfish because he does not want to relinquish his ill-gotten gains, namely his crown, his queen, as well as his own ambition. We are aware that women during the Elizabethan era did not really have a voice, so they were basically secondary characters. Gertrude is still the Queen of Denmark after her first husband's death, and we are not sure of how much clout she had in the decision-making of the Lords when they elected Claudius as king. She is Hamlet's mother, and after Hamlet's father dies, she very quickly marries Hamlet's uncle Claudius. She seems to be a good woman and a loving mother who has her son's interests at heart. But she is also weak-willed, and it seems she's unable to control her personal passions. Now, whether it is because of lust or love or a desire to maintain her status or power as queen, she marries Claudius, although this is clearly a breach of proper morals, because this marriage is described by both Hamlet and the Ghost as being incestuous. It is as if she had married her own brother. Now, although some critics have argued that Gertrude might have been involved in Claudius's plot to kill old Hamlet, there is no evidence in the text that suggests that she is unaware of and uninvolved in this particular plot. So it is not something that you are going to spend too much time agitating on or about. You know, often Gertrude is painted as a fickle, stupid woman who is not really clued up about the deceptions and of the royal court. However, at some points in the play, Gertrude does show insight into certain situations. And also, one can examine after Hamlet attacked her on her marriage to Claudius and begged her not to sleep with Claudius, we see that she has done some reflection and she does not divulge to Claudius the full extent of Hamlet's verbal attack on her in her chambers after Polonius is killed. Polonius is an advisor to the king, and his official title is that of Lord Chamberlain of Denmark. So what does the Lord Chamberlain do? The Lord Chamberlain basically organizes certain events. It's like an events manager for the king. If he gets visitations from other luminaries or dignitaries from other countries, then he has to organize events and logistics around that. So he deeply loves his children, Ophelia and Laertes, and he wishes to protect them at all costs, even to the point of spying on them. He's an overbearing parent and extremely insensitive to his daughter's feelings, especially after she is viciously insulted by Hamlet. And he sort of says something to her in the vein of, it's okay, you don't have to tell us what Hamlet said to you. We heard it all. And he doesn't even feel any remorse for his daughter, who must have been greatly embarrassed to have been shamed by Hamlet in the manner that he shames her. In today's terms, we would probably call him a helicopter parent, because he seems to want to know everything about his children, especially his daughter Ophelia. He even wants to know about her relationship with Hamlet. He reads the letters that Hamlet had given or sent to Ophelia, and he also wants to know the ins and outs of that particular relationship. He's extremely opinionated, and he's pompous, he's full of himself, he's long-winded. You know, when he makes a speech, you know, he brings in some kind of comic relief, because he has such a lot of extra or additional things that he says without really coming to the point immediately. He also has the capacity or propensity to scheme, but unfortunately for him, he does not have Hamlet or Claudius's skill in being able to plot and scheme effectively. He is very aware of his position and of his role as Lord Chamberlain, and is always careful to try to be on the good side of power. So he's quite sycophantic, and he's very aware of his own reputation, and he keeps on reminding both his son and his daughter that they must conduct themselves in such a manner that is not going to ruin their own reputation. And because of their association to him as his children, they also would then ruin and affect his standing in society and ruin his own relationship. And at times one gets a sense that his concern is more for himself and his own reputation rather than on the well-being of his own children. Polonius' son Laertes is seen as a foil for Hamlet. Remember, we said that a foil is another character who is juxtaposed with the protagonist to highlight the similarities and the differences between the two characters. He's also Ophelia's brother, and he has returned to Denmark to attend the funeral of old King Hamlet. He is hot-headed and very passionate and loves his family deeply. However, we also notice that he is quite condescending towards his sister. He treats her as if she is a mere child. He gives her advice and warns her that she must be very careful of the relationship that she has with Hamlet, because Laertes' concern is that Hamlet might be using his sister just to sleep with her, and that Hamlet is not in love with her, so she has to be very careful, because her association with Hamlet might just ruin her reputation. Now, unlike Hamlet, he is a man prone to action rather than thought. However, he does not consider the consequences of his actions, and that aspect of his personality is almost just as bad as Hamlet's indecision. He also seeks vengeance for the death of his father, and as mentioned, he also is a foil for Hamlet. So as Hamlet is indecisive and thinks very carefully before making decisions, Laertes, on the other hand, is quick to make decisions, but sometimes his impulsive nature is basically could be to his disadvantage because he acts without thinking. There are basically only two female characters in the drama. One of them is Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, and we know that she has poisoned his mind against other women, and this is of course unknowingly after she married Claudius so soon after her first husband's death. Ophelia is Polonius' daughter and Laertes' sister, and at the beginning of the play we understand that she's also Hamlet's love interest. As a woman, Ophelia is expected to obey the men around her, and she is forced by her father to first stop speaking to Hamlet, and then she's also forced or encouraged by her father to spy on Hamlet. It does seem, though, that she is not given a choice by the men in her life. You know, she's extremely loyal to her father, and as a result, she estranges herself from a possible union with Hamlet, and this ultimately causes her to lose her mind. Because when none of the male characters are around after her father has died, she has no one on whom to depend. And therefore, because she is not an independent thinker, she is without the foundation. Or if you think of her as a little puppet on a string held by her father, when those puppet strings are cut, she crumbles, and as a result, there is no other option for her but to commit suicide. Ophelia exemplifies the subservience of women in Elizabethan society. Note that she basically does everything that her father requests of her, and she even asks him what she must think. She lacks the duplicitous nature to be an effective spy, and so Hamlet very quickly realizes that when he meets up with her and she returns his gifts, he quickly realizes that she is not there of her own volition or choice, but she is there because she had probably been dictated to by her father to arrange this meeting with Hamlet. She also features or acts as a kind of female foil for Hamlet. She mirrors Hamlet's half madness, but ultimately she really loses her mind, whereas Hamlet pretends to be mad. We note that Ophelia's madness is true and authentic, whereas Hamlet's is obviously a sham. Hamlet feels very isolated in the Danish court. He does not feel that he has any friends there, and he also feels that his mother probably, as well as his love interest Ophelia, are not really true in their feelings for him. And the only person Hamlet can depend on is his university friend Horatio. Both of them are students at Wittenberg University, and he becomes Hamlet's confidant in his effort to take revenge against Claudius. So Hamlet shares his plan to catch the king out with Horatio. He gives details of that plan. It is also Horatio who tells Hamlet about the ghost that has been spied on the battlements and invites Hamlet to also view the ghost himself. Hamlet values Horatio's self-restraint. We also know that Horatio is the character in the play that is least removed by any passion. He displays a stability and equanimity, a balance of emotions that the other characters in the drama seem to lack. One of his most important qualities is his undying loyalty for Hamlet, even right up until the end. As Hamlet lays dying, Horatio actually wants to commit suicide as an act of loyalty in order to support his dear friend Hamlet. The ghost that appears on the battlements also plays a big role in events as they occur. If it had not been, or if it is not for the ghost of Hamlet's dead father requesting that Hamlet avenge his death, then Hamlet would not have been faced with the moral dilemma that he is faced with. The ghost first appears in armor and appears in front of the soldiers who are guarding the castle. Now, the fact that he is dressed in battle gear or armor foreshadows the battles, namely the external and the internal battles that will be waged as the play progresses. Remember that Hamlet is engaged in a battle with himself about the fact that he procrastinates and delays taking revenge on his father's murderer. Hamlet also battles other characters. For example, he is engaged in a battle of wits with Claudius. He's engaged in a battle with Ophelia, who he feels has rejected him. He's also in a battle with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern because they are disloyal to him and he feels that they are spying on him. The ghost is forced to endure the fires of purgatory because he was murdered by Claudius in his sleep, and as a result, he was unable to ask forgiveness for his sins. It is the ghost that orders Hamlet, as mentioned, to get revenge against Claudius, but he also asks Hamlet to spare his mother and leave her to heaven. There is evidence in the play to suggest that the ghost really is the spirit of Hamlet's father. But we also know there are times when Hamlet actually wonders whether it is his father's ghost or if it is in fact a demon in disguise. And it is also that question which contributes to Hamlet's procrastination, because he does not know if the ghost is a goblin damned who has come to lead him astray, or if it is indeed his father's ghost. And if indeed it is legitimately his father's ghost, then he will be forced to seek vengeance for his father's death. And so once again, there is that moral dilemma which Hamlet faces. On the one hand, society expects him to do the noble thing and avenge his father's death. But on the other hand, Christianity also teaches him that he has to turn the other cheek and that murder is sinful. Fortinbras is also a prince just like Hamlet, and as mentioned before, he's also a foil for Hamlet. So we do know that Prince Fortinbras of Norway is actually bent on taking revenge for his father's death. And old Hamlet's father, had killed Fortinbras in battle and had taken a parcel of lands that had been set as a wager in the battle. So when Fortinbras died, then his lands were also then bequeathed to old Hamlet, as had been decided upon before the actual battle had been conducted. Now these events occur about 30 years before the play actually commences. So Fortinbras, at the beginning of the play, we are told that he is seeking revenge for his father's death, and he demands from Denmark that they return the lands which his father had to give off. He's also another son seeking revenge and is definitely Hamlet's foil. But unlike Hamlet, who procrastinate, Fortinbras is also hot-headed and is extremely determined, and he constantly makes efforts to make sure that he is going to avenge his father's death. Instead of becoming paralyzed like Hamlet does with all those philosophical questions about whether you should or whether you shouldn't, Fortinbras is decisive. He actually raises an army and heads to Poland to begin reclaiming the lands lost in the battles that took his father's life. So ultimately, he does actually get his revenge. After Hamlet dies, he becomes king of Denmark. Now, what happens there is that Hamlet, when he realizes that he is dying, he then names Fortinbras as his successor. Fortinbras does not really appear in many sections of the play, but the playwright sort of reminds the audience about what Fortinbras is currently busy with. And whenever there is mention of Fortinbras, we realize that Hamlet has delayed for too long, and we are reminded of Hamlet's indecisive nature. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are considered minor characters in the drama. They are friends of Hamlet from Wittenberg, who have been asked by Claudius and Gertrude to try and figure out the source of Hamlet's melancholy or depression. So Hamlet sees the two of them as essentially spying on him, and he eventually turns upon them. Now, they are not the smartest fellows, but it does seem that they are trying or thinking in their minds that they are actually helping the king and queen to decipher what is wrong with Hamlet. You'll notice that these two characters seem to speak for each other. They use the pronoun form we to explain if somebody asks them a question. So it seems as if here we have two individuals who seem to think for each other, and sometimes we think of them as being one character because their qualities or characteristics are so very similar. You know, if somebody asks the one a question, and then the one will actually ask the other character for affirmation before they answer. They are sycophantic. They will go to great lengths to please the king and queen. So much so that they do not really question why it is that the king and queen wants to spy on Hamlet, or they don't even question the morality of their spying, namely the fact that they are spying on a friend. They are, however, no match for Hamlet's intellect, and they actually admit to spying on him when he interrogates them about their presence at Elsinore, and this is at the first meeting. So one can see that these are not particularly intelligent individuals, but they are probably looking at the situation and thinking how they can best impress the king and basically just earn some credits for themselves and their reputations. Unfortunately for them, both of them die in a very calculated manner or plot which has been set for them by Hamlet. There are a number of minor characters in the drama who do not play a very important role in facilitating events as they do, or in affecting the main characters profoundly. However, sometimes a playwright can creates a character to remind the audience of some of the values that the protagonist upholds, or the minor character might reflect some quality of, for example, the antagonist or any of the other characters. So there is Osric. He is a foolish yes man. He's a courtier who informs Hamlet that Claudius had placed a wager, a bet, that Hamlet can defeat Laertes in a duel. And so he comes to inform Hamlet about this, and also probably explains what the procedures are when the duel is going to take place. Then there are characters, the courtiers Voldemort and Cornelius, and these are representatives. We can think of them as basically almost like ambassadors whom Claudius sends to Norway to persuade the king to prevent or stop Fortinbras from attacking Denmark. And they are introduced in Act 1, Scene 2, when Claudius addresses his subjects to explain his marriage to Gertrude, and also here he displays how he deals with matters of state. We also have Marcellus and Bernardo, and they only appear in the scenes when the ghost is spied. They are officers of the watch, almost like securities, who have to ensure that the castle is safe at night, and they see the ghost walking on the ramparts of Elsinore, and they summon Horatio to witness the sighting of the ghost. Marcellus is also present when Hamlet first encounters the ghost, because he had been invited to do so by Horatio. We also have Francisco. He's also a soldier and a guardsman at Elsinore, who also sees the ghost and is greatly scared by the presence of the ghost. We have Reynaldo. He is Polonius' servant, who is sent by Polonius to France to actually spy on Laertes. So as you can see, these characters really do not play any profound role in events as they unfold, or in contributing to the tension or the action or the decisions that the characters have to make in the drama itself.